Good morning and welcome to Coffee and the Word. I told you the other day, sorry about yesterday, I told you the other day that the promised Messiah was promised all the way back at the beginning in chapter 3 of Genesis, after the fall. God says that he will, the offspring of a woman will crush the head of the serpent and he will bruise his heel. And of course, that is a messianic prophecy that starts at the very beginning. And prophecies are very important in our understanding of the value of the narrative. If you can predict things, it means something. But I want to tell you a little different perspective today, because the promised Messiah would happen through the lineage of a man named Abraham. Now, God could have chosen anybody. In fact, God could have chosen somebody who would have been much better suited to be the fulfillment of this prophecy, because the man that he chose is married to a woman who is barren. He chose a man named Abraham, and, well, he was named Abram at the time, but he chose a man named Abram whose wife was barren. And if you don't know what that means, barren means she was not capable of having kids. She hadn't had kids up to this point. She wouldn't have kids all the way up until they were well advanced in years. And so God calls this guy Abraham out, and he makes him a covenant. He makes him this covenant that says that he will be the father of a great nation. His descendants will number the sands of the seashore. And this one is the important one. Through his descendants, all the nations of the earth would be blessed. And so that promise is the messianic promise. It's through your descendant, all the nations of the earth would be blessed. But God chose Abraham. Abraham, a man who's married to a woman who can't have children. This is one of the most encouraging things you can read. You see, because one of the things we need to understand is when God promises something, he's not limited by your deficiencies. He's not limited by the things that you may not be capable of. He's not limited by the things that maybe you're hindered by. He's not limited by the things that we tend to believe it's hopeless for. In fact, I want you to listen, because it would be really interesting if Abraham was like, totally cool. My wife's barren. Everything will be fine. God's got this. But that's not really how he approached it. In fact, Abraham and Sarah both were like, where's this son? Because there was this delayed hope. God promised them a son and the son wasn't coming. God promised them a son and the son wasn't coming. God promised a son and the son wasn't coming. And so at some point you become discouraged. And a lot of things happen to us in those times, right? During our time of discouragement, we become certain that we're supposed to do something different, or we become certain that the promise that we heard isn't the true promise. We become certain of a lot of things. But you have to understand, Abraham is the father of promise. He's the father of faith. He's the father of the messianic prophecy. And so all the nations of the earth have to be blessed through him, because God made that promise. God cannot lie. But sometimes it gets tough. And so they begin to question. And I want to pick up in Genesis chapter 18, and I want to read this to you. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre, while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of the tent to meet them and bowed down to the ground. He said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought." And so he has this big moment, and he says, "Where's your wife Sarah?" they ask him. "There in the tent," he said. Then one of them said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son." So that had to be a relief, right? I mean, there's a whole lot of this story I'm not telling, but that had to be a relief. Sarah, your wife, will have a son. And they're like, man, I didn't think that was ever going to happen. But I want you to listen to what happens, because Sarah's reaction is a lot of our reaction. Now Sarah was listening at the entrance of the tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already very old, and Sarah was well past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, after I am worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure? God has given lots of promises to us. And I know that there are a lot of times when those promises just don't seem possible. Doesn't seem like it's going to work anymore. All of the windows of opportunity have passed. All the moments of hope have just vanished. And so we give up. But I want you to listen to the obstacles that God overcomes. The first obstacle God overcomes is a barren woman. A woman who can't have kids. The second obstacle God overcomes is a barren woman who can't have kids, who's well past the age of childbearing. Her and Abraham are both very old at this time, the scripture says. And I don't know if you know this or not, but she did have that son. The son's name was Isaac. And then Isaac had Jacob. And Jacob had 12 sons. And those 12 sons became the nation of Israel. And the nation of Israel became the very nation, the very lineage through which Jesus was born. As we celebrate Christmas this year, we will watch lots of movies. Some of you will watch those wonderful Hallmark movies where everything happens just right at just the right time. And you want to believe that, right? You want to believe that can happen. With God, that does happen. One of my favorite passages, Romans 8 and verse 28, says, we know that God works together all things for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. No matter what you're feeling right now, if you're waiting on a promise of God, if you're looking to a promise of God, it may be delayed by your understanding, but God is working it out. And God, who cannot lie, will fulfill his promise, and it doesn't matter what circumstances you have that may hinder under normal circumstances. Our God is a mighty God. So I don't know where you're at today, but I want you to know this. When you think about Christmas, Jesus was born fulfilling over, I think, 108 prophecies. Just fulfilling 8 of those is an impossibility, a statistical impossibility. He fulfilled 108. I want you to understand something. God is able to do exactly what he's promised. So don't wait on Christmas hope of a Christmas movie. Realize that the birth of Jesus reminds us that God is able to deliver exactly as he promised against all odds. God bless you. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. This has been another edition of Coffee and the Word.